Dan Tom here at Xtreme Couture for Home of Fight, talking with head coach and one of the best coaches and corners in the game for my money, Eric Nicksick. Eric, thank you for the time again. How are you today, buddy?
Always, brother. What's up, XCOG?
Always, hey, always, you know. But that being said, we're going to get down to business here, try to put the biases aside because we have so much to talk about and catch up. So let's get into it. But before we get into future matchups and events, I got to ask you quickly, Eric, about a couple past matchups involving your guys and, you know, relative to your guys. We had, first of all, MVP's Netflix on MMA debut, which was huge. Yeah. It gave a lot of us OGs like Strikeforce vibes, and I saw from the photos, we had guys like Stitch Duran, even was Burt Watson backstage?
Burt was there, man. Yeah, Burt was there. He was, you know, we rolling. He had the old vibes in the back, so it was always great to see Burt. It was funny, like, you know, I talk to Burt all the time, but it was great to see him back with that energy. T. Wade was there, you know, so some of the old OGs were back in there, so it was nice.
Yeah, man. So that was one of my, I guess, not really worries. I don't have your job, so it's not really a worry for me. But these are things you have to think about where I'm like, okay, we're going to have the Netflix production, which is going to be big. The cameras look good. But it's a new show. There's a lot of kinks. And more importantly, that backroom kind of chemistry can be real crucial to getting your guys warmed up and ready on time. When I saw Burt Watson there, I felt better, but I wasn't there, Eric. You were. Tell me, how was your experience overall from that perspective? And, you know, you can't speak for Francis Ngannou, who was one of your fighters on there, but how do you feel like you guys were treated overall?
Honestly, it was smooth, man. It went over really well. I was actually really impressed. For their first time, like, kind of running that event, the production was great. You know, usually you're kind of stuck in the back, and man, it had a good flow. Like, we got there, they're like, all right, drug test, wrap Francis up, warm him up. You guys are walking. And I was like, oh shit, this is great. You know what I mean? Like, for me, the only thing I would say that I would like to see them improve on is let's do the post-fight press conference immediately after, so we don't have to sit around and wait. You know what I mean? But other than that, dude, zero complaints. I'd give it a 9 out of 10. I'd say one criticism would be like, hey, the fight's over. Get the press conference done so you can send everybody home. Other than that, man, it was smooth.
Yeah, it's always hard to be too critical for the first time, and that's great to get that feedback. And of course, we mentioned Francis Ngannou, of course, the lineal heavyweight champion, the baddest man on the planet, according to most, right?
Sure.
So he had a great night out from our perspective. But again, you're the coach, you're the corner, you're the one that has to, I dare say, be critical even for things like this. But you said he came into camp low on weight.
Yeah.
We see the performance. I mean, from the outside, it looked like he got A pluses. But you tell us, Coach, how are you happy with your athlete?
Very happy, and furthermore, I was actually like welcomed a little bit of cage time. You know, I thought it was good to see him in there, move around, defend some takedowns. You know, we didn't see like a lot of adversity by any means, but there were still some things where, you know, knowing Francis and knowing how critical we can be, I was very happy with his performance. Furthermore, like you said, comes into camp in shape, ready to go. It doesn't matter the opponent. It could be Tyson Fury, it could be John Jones, Felipe Lins. It doesn't matter. Francis is in shape, ready to go, and I was really happy to see that. Like, we didn't have to come into camp, get his weight down, get him motivated. He came in ready to rock. So, man, I couldn't be happier with everything.
And again, this is just from an outside perspective, but the vibes look good. I mean, obviously we know Francis has been through some challenging things, and he overcomes adversity like he always does, but that's not easy, and we weren't sure what we were going to see, but it looked like the vibes were great. But you tell me, how was it in the training practices? Was he missing MMA? Was he happy to be back, getting back to the, you know, the grappling aspects and the other things that come with it?
Sure. No, very, very happy to be back. I think when we talk MMA with him, he realizes he's just kind of scratching the surface, man. You know, as his MMA coach, those things are kind of tough because it's like, all right, now we got a year, and then, you know, when we were really rolling, when we had Junior Dos Santos, our vision was always Stipe. We had a camp in between in Jairzinho, but our mindset was, how can we unsee the champion? How can we continue to grow? The nice thing was, during the Jairzinho camp, we worked so hard on his wrestling, but he didn't have to show it. And then by the time we got to the Stipe fight, he showed glimpses of the wrestling. And then when we had the Gane fight, you saw this offensive wrestling. So we were able to build on things within those camps. The hard part is now, you know, now you go away from MMA and you get into boxing. It helped us in certain regards, but, you know, that advancements in the wrestling and the grappling and things like that kind of take a pause. So getting him back in the room, getting him back into the wrestling and grappling, it's not necessarily a challenge. It's just more like kind of getting back on the bike.
Yeah, I think the key word there maybe is momentum, right?
Sure.
And that kind of parlays into the next question, because as a coach, it sounds like you want to keep the momentum and positive flow, and who wouldn't?
Right.
But as you know, there are names being thrown around for potential names to Francis to fight, and some of those names might not be in MMA.
Sure.
So do you have any opinions? Again, it's Francis's career. You've always been supportive, not just a coach, as a friend. You don't speak for him, but you are the coach. So do you have any opinions as far as what could be next for him, or maybe what you would like to see next?
Not really. I mean, I know that they're throwing that Jake Paul name out there, and you know, for me, I want to compete against the best, right? Because that's our job, essentially. But now understanding the way Francis's career has kind of taken not necessarily a turn, but he's in a position now where he's an independent contractor, a true independent contractor, and he's taking the best fights that come available to him that maximizes his availability to fight with the money behind it. So whatever he says, man, we're going to be ready for it, whether it's boxing, MMA, you know, slap fight, whatever the hell he wants to do.
Yeah, you said Jake Paul there, and obviously on the same event for the MMA side, Rebellis de Spain was another name thrown around, right? Yeah. But there's another name, and before I get to Rico Verhoeven, first I got to ask, did you see the boxing fight with him and Alexander Usyk, or at least the stoppage, and what are your thoughts on that, Eric?
Oh, man, you know, it was shades of Francis and Tyson Fury. It really was, man. I remember round 3, I believe, when Francis dropped Tyson Fury, I looked right at the Queensberry guys and the panic and look on their face going like, oh shit, this is not what we expected, right? I'm not saying anything's fixed. It just, the vibe feels different when it comes to boxing. It really does. And when the fight was over, I remember looking at Francis like, Bubba, you won. And he goes, I won, but I know they're not going to give me this decision. Like, he knew prior to going in. So a lot of times I think when it comes to boxing, I'm not saying it's predetermined, but knowing Rico going into that fight, he's a champion by fighting Usyk. He looked amazing in that fight. Thought the stoppage was kind of weak. But credit to him, man. I hope he made a lot of money, and he really showed the world that he belongs, and we can go out and compete against these guys.
Yeah, well, you're certainly not alone in your opinions, and I myself don't like to put the tinfoil hat on, try to stay professional, but boy, does it make it hard with the things we've seen and the evidence that's stacking up, evidence that you've been a part of. To your point, you've seen that, you've been on, you know, you guys were kind of free rolling, but now that you've, you know, experienced that decision, we've seen more. To your point, yeah, we kind of see how it goes, right? And you maybe you factor that in for any future Francis fights in that arena.
Well, when have you ever seen a guy fighting Tyson Fury fighting Francis Ngannou with the Usyk fight already booked? Right? So it's like, all right, well, they don't want to throw that aside because they already have it booked. They already have money behind it in the promotion. So how does that work out? When have you ever seen a guy in the UFC fighting for a title but with a fight already booked? Right? It just none of that really makes sense.
Absolutely. But what does make sense, at least to some people, is now they're throwing Rico Verhoeven's name in with maybe Francis Ngannou. Now, obviously, you know, these guys are aware of each other. I believe you've worked with Rico and know him. Yeah. So obviously you have respect on both sides, but what's your opinion on that potential fight as far as it being realistic, and just your thoughts on if it happened in general?
He's the best heavyweight striker on the planet, and he's amazing. I've got to hold pads for him numerous times. He's got to come in and help Francis with camp when we were fighting Ciryl Gane. Nothing but love and respect for him. If this is a potential fight these guys want to make, I'm all for it, man, because you're talking about two of the best heavyweights in the world at what they do in their craft. So if it means that these guys get to make money and go and compete against each other, I'm all for it.
Awesome. Now, moving on to the rest of your stable, Eric, you know, they say when you want to, you know, evaluate a coach, you don't look at his best fighter. You don't look at, you know, oh, did he have Conor McGregor? Did he have Francis Ngannou, for example, right? You kind of look at the fighters, the overall stable. The proof is in the proverbial pudding. And when I look at your resume, I always point to fighters like the Dan Iges, the Kai Kamakas of the world, who, you know, are getting out there, not just making it to the big show, making it back in Kai's case, who I recently talked to. So I got to ask you, I know he's already got another fight booked on a really big card, by the way, Conor McGregor versus Max Holloway. Kai will be fighting Luke Riley. What are your thoughts on both Kai's return, and now he's already booked in a huge fight? I mean, how happy are you for that guy?
Oh, bro, I couldn't be happier. just seeing the ups and downs throughout his career, and it's been a lot of ups, right? Like, and a lot of challenges. But when you talk about a guy who has a family, his work ethic, not only from him but from his wife, he's got 5 kids. All those things that he does on a day in and day out basis without changing his approach, right? And it was challenging, but to see his growth and his maturation throughout this sport, when he first came to Xtreme Couture, and seeing him now in the development, I tell people, man, he's the playbook. He's the guy like him and Manel and guys that I get to watch on a day-to-day basis. It makes me a better coach. I'm really able to learn from these guys as well, and I think that's what's important about that coach and fighter relationship. Are you able to grow along with your fighter? And that's him right there.
And that's beautiful. And following on that, example and kind of going through your stable further, you didn't just get fighters back to the UFC. You even got them back and winning world titles. Of course, I'm referring to Sean Strickland, right? And I got to say, Eric, I actually interviewed Sean Strickland 2015, over like a decade ago, back when he was out in California, and a friend of the gym was like, okay, got to warn you about this guy, he'll talk about this or that, and the stuff that we all know about Sean now. So it was kind of funny watching the world, discover that. But I only mentioned that to say is that he was a bit more nomadic back then, and it was like, oh, can you get through to a guy like this? The skills there, the experience is there. And man, hats off to you, Eric. Not only have you been able to give this kid a home, but you've been able to give him a place to thrive. And obviously, you're not going to take credit for that. But how good does it feel to see him get back to that title?
Oh man, I love it because I've known him since 2014. Well publicized ups and downs that we've had, and that's because I love him. I care about him. I know what he's capable of. We all do in this room. And to your point, man, I got to give credit to my old man. I remember my sophomore year, we had on our defensive side of the ball, we had some outlaws and renegades, man. And these guys were crazy. And at some point, my dad was able to get all these guys together and go out and compete for a state championship. And I remember asking my dad, like, how do you do something like that when you have guys that are like nomads and outlaws? And he goes, what you do? You give them responsibility. And he goes, when you give them responsibility, they feel a part of something. They have self-actualization. So to make sure that we got Sean as a team guy, that's what we started to do. We started to put more responsibility on his plate. And then all of a sudden he became a team captain. And this gym became his home. And furthermore, his work ethic started to rub off on the rest of the guys in the room, that grittiness. He's a throwback. You've been here since day one. When we see Sean Strickland was 30 guys that were in here in 2010, right? Yes. That was Xtreme Couture. Yeah. Now Sean is a last of the Mohicans type. Like the game has changed, but when I see Sean, I think of old Xtreme Couture and that toughness, that grittiness. So having him in this room and the way that he is now, it brings that throwback mentality, but it also brings a work ethic, a grind that we all need, man. And not only that, he's bringing world titles back to Xtreme, right? We've taken a guy that, doesn't really like jump off the page with all this athleticism, right. But what he does really well. If I was making a comparison, he reminds me of like Greg Maddux, right? Okay, yeah. Like he's a spot pitcher. He's got his out pitch. He's got 4 or 5. He's a location guy, and what he does, and he does it really well, and he's going to put up Hall of Fame numbers.
I always love athletes like that, so I appreciate that reference. And I also appreciate the teaching reference because I myself taught some classes here back in the day. And one of my methodologies as a teacher is if you have a problematic child, don't punish them. Give them more responsibility. It sounds counterintuitive to most, but to your point, boy, you can make some diamonds that way too.
Well, Abraham Maslow, right? The hierarchy of needs, and self-accusation is a big one. And when you have a guy who has been abandoned and left, when you really look at his psychology and what's gone on with Sean in his life, I think that for me, in retrospect, when him and I had that little issue, wasn't even an issue, it was a situation. I looked back at myself within and I thought to myself, that's where I messed up, is because he looks at me as a brother, and the first thing that happened was abandonment. It's like, well, if you're going to leave me, I'm going to leave you first. Well, that wasn't the approach that I should have taken there. But understanding Sean and knowing the psychology behind Sean, I think that is where he has thrived at Xtreme, is when you give somebody like that responsibilities and ownership of what they have, and that's when I really started to see him thrive.
That's fantastic. Now, looking ahead to big cards, we mentioned, Conor McGregor versus Max Holloway, and Kai's going to be on that card. But before that card goes down, we got UFC Freedom 250, the White House card coming up. Now, I know, perhaps maybe not featured fighters on there, so to speak, but you're obviously very familiar with the name. So, Eric, I got to get your opinions on some of the top fights. Mainly, Alex Poatan Pereira versus Ciryl Gane. I mean, it's very interesting, the move up to heavyweight. You've experienced that before, both heavyweights, light heavyweights. You got Johnny Walker, who's making that move now, right? So you're going to be seeing it again kind of firsthand, a similar frame. What's your thoughts on Alex Pereira both moving up, and what do you think his chances are?
I think his chances are very good. The guy is absolutely huge, but I think his body type, but his style really is going to fit that division stylistically with this matchup, right? Like if he was going out and fighting a Tom Aspinall or a guy who has the grappling pedigree, that I think would change my approach. But because of the style matchup with Ciryl Gane, it's not going to be this guy who's going to come out and try to steamroll and wrestle him right away, right? So I think he's going to translate really well into division. And talking to Francis, it was funny because I was leaning more towards Alex Pereira in this fight. And then I sat and talked with Francis over fight week, and his vision of what Ciryl Gane's going to be able to execute kind of skewed my opinion on this situation a little bit more in that fight. I'm like, oh, you got a lot of good points there, So I'm looking forward to that fight, man. I definitely think the odds are right where they need to be, almost 50-50. But I think Alex is going to translate really well in the heavyweight division.
And that's interesting, not to put any words in Francis' mouth, but it sounds like he's leaning toward Gane.
He is, and like kind of listening to his breakdown of it, I'm like, oh, you got a lot of good points there as far as the movement goes. When Alex fought a guy like Yuri Prochazka, the thing that I think that Yuri does really well is unpredictability, but what he does very bad is he leaves his defense behind. When he's throwing, there's a hand down. If his cross is going, his left hand's down. If his hook is going, his right hand's down. And a guy like Alex is a sniper. He's able to find those holes within your defense. Ciryl Gane really doesn't have that. It's very difficult to hit him. He doesn't get hit clean very much. He utilizes his movement really well, and he's tough to find. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out.
Yeah, and I was going to say the same thing. I think it's going to be, the footwork. And I think a lot of Francis' success, for example, was the, cage geography that you preach to your fighters, the loading and reloading of shots for cage corralling. I think those are going to be key. And that's more of my questions. Obviously, Poatan's got the ability, but I do wonder what that strategy is going to be like, which is why I want to ask the man himself, who came up with a great strategy to beat the man.
If I'm Ciryl Gane, I'm looking to break Alex Pereira's base down. Very plotty type of striker. He does get kicked a lot, and I can kind of see Ciryl taking that route and trying to take away his lead leg, possibly early on, and that'll try to nullify some of Alex's movement. So, but I understand where Francis's approach is at with that too. So yeah, man, I think it's going to be a good fight. And then at the end of the day, Alex has got that fucking act right. You know what I mean? He lands one, and it's a wrap.
Yeah, absolutely. And I got to ask you about one more fight from that card. You got Ilia Topuria versus Justin Gaethje. Obviously, the interim lightweight champion Gaethje versus the undisputed champion, former featherweight champion Topuria. Obviously, the odds are heavily scored. Sway toward Topuria. He's one of the best pound-for-pound fighters. I don't think anybody's denying that. Right. So I guess my question is to you, being familiar with both guys, but also with Gaethje, what would be your argument for maybe why Justin Gaethje would be maybe a livelier dog than some people are, giving credit for? Or do you not feel that way? What is your opinion?
I think Gaethje always has a chance in any fight. I think Ilia has more paths to victory and more opportunities to win if he certainly wants to incite his grappling game. But I go back to the Poirier and Gaethje fight when Gaethje was out of nowhere, throws the same side head kick. And for me, if I'm fighting Topuria, you have to keep his backhand active, by meaning you have to be able to jam that with the kicks. So if I'm on the Gaethje side of things, I'm looking to kick a lot. I'm looking to same side. I'm looking to exit with it, those condit rolls to keep his right hand busy. How do you keep it jammed? You got to kick that thing.
Yeah, I think that's why a lot of us wanted to see that Islam Topuria matchup, right? Because a southpaw kicker who can wrestle, that might be the key, archetype. Not to overly simplify it, of course.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I think you just have to come up with some different things. The fight that he had with the British kid, where he got hit with the head kick, Jai Herbert. There's some flaws there, and I've seen Topuria get head kicked in some of those areas. So I think with Trevor Whitman and Gaethje and those guys, they're going to come up with a good good game plan and make it competitive. But if I had to pick, I would say it's Topuria, just because there's more paths to victory for him.
Awesome, Eric. Appreciate your time. We're going to push on to the last couple of fights I want to ask you before we get you out of here. Now, we mentioned Topuria. I think a lot of fighters, including Max Holloway, came in with great game plans against him as far as what to do. But Max Holloway, of course, is facing Conor McGregor. Conor is back, and you're going to be there at that card.
Yeah.
As you know, you've been around. You know, say what you will. There's no experience like a Conor card.
100%.
So I got to ask you, what do you think about that matchup between Conor and Max, and how do you see it, playing out, or what are the factors in your eyes?
Well, I love that you brought that up, because, when you have Conor on a card, it's like selling your house for over market value, right? Or the guy in the neighborhood sells his house for $1 million over market value, raises the level of the entire neighborhood. So having Conor on this card is huge. My question would be, what's he been doing in the time being, right? We all know Max. We know Max is training every day, working every day. But it is Conor, man, and he has a win over Max in the past. I know Max is probably going to try to get that win, that loss back. That would be my question, man, is what type of training has Conor been doing during this time off? How's he looked? Is it a fight at 170 or 155?
170.
170. Okay, so now you're not looking at a tough weight cut for either guy. And Max is a big dude, man. So that's actually nice to hear, because these guys could just show up and not really have to cut a lot of weight and get after it. But for me, I'd lean towards Max. Obviously, the guy that's been more active, more present. That's the way I lean towards that card.
Awesome. Us Hawaiians have no issue gaining weight. But Kai Kamaka will be on that card versus Luke Riley. And obviously, you got your guy there. But what are your thoughts on the matchup? I think it's a really good matchup that the matchmakers seem to really like as well. But what are your thoughts?
I mean, it was a fight that Kai wanted, to be honest with you. We watched the Aswell fight. I believe we were watching it together, and it was a fight before Kai got in the UFC, and he said, man, I really like that matchup. He won, and then we were out in Miami, I believe, with Sean Shelby, and he threw that name out, and Sean goes, I like it. Let's do it. So, we have our work cut out for us. This kid's a great prospect, up-and-coming guy. I think for us, we can really open up the playbook with Kai and make some confusion out of Luke Riley and give him some different looks that he hasn't seen. So we're excited to roll out this game plan for him.
All right, and last two upcoming fighters I want to bring up are two more fighters who, again, bounced around with success, but coincidentally enough, since making a home here, have been sharpening out their skills and getting the results to follow. One of those fighters being Manel Kape, who's got a big matchup against Kyoji Horiguchi coming up. Can you tell me about your work with Manel? He's been looking sharp in the gym, and your thoughts on the matchup.
Oh, man. Manel is, vision, footwork, movement, everything. Like, every time I watch this guy, I'm just blown away, man. Like, when he's sparring, the gym stops and everybody sits here and watches. He's a champion through and through, man. We have a tough matchup in Horiguchi, who he's lost to in Risen. But Manel's been on a tear, and so is Horiguchi. It's a fight that, should we sit and wait for the title? That's just not Manel's style. He wants to go out there and compete. So June 20th, that's our guy, main event. He's been looking amazing. I can't wait for that fight.
Neither can I. You guys had a great game plan that went to T against Royval. So really curious what you guys cook up for Horiguchi. But lastly but not leastly, a fighter I've been seeing mature from the outside. You tell me, though, is Edmen Shahbazyan. I mean, he has the emotion and the fire you want, and is a prerequisite for a fighter.
Sure. But
since coming here and in his fights and in the practice rooms, I'm seeing like a maturity. But that's my outside perspective. You tell me, Eric.
Man, I cannot wait. I wrote him today. I woke up this morning and go, bro, I cannot wait for this fight, to be able to show what we've been working on over the past 4 fights. But I got to give a lot of credit to Sean Strickland. He's helped Edmen immensely, and it's not necessarily just with the sparring, the mental side of things. And Sean's edge and his grittiness has rubbed off on Edmen. And I think that's something that Edmen needed. He needed that fighter element within him. And it's not like we need you to be Sean. We need you to have spurts of that meanness. And, pairing those guys up, they've helped each other immensely. And, Jason Manley, Sean, all these guys have really helped this growth and maturation that we're seeing from Edmen Shahbazyan. And cannot wait for June 6th and going to see what this guy's able to do.
Fantastic. I'm excited too. Very last question, though, I got to sneak in, Eric. We already mentioned Netflix MMA. Scott Coker said he's coming back with he's got like a $60 million backing to start a global MMA league. MMA, obviously, very dominated by the UFC, no secret. And I'm going to guess I know your answer, but I'm really curious to hear it, Eric. Do you think these more MMA promotions, is this refreshing to see? Do you think it's good for the sport right now, even the crazy stuff?
Absolutely. We need these. We need more. It's not about like looking to try to compete against the UFC. It's providing more availability and options for fighters, maybe guys that are outside the organization that maybe fought in the UFC, or guys that are looking to try to get into the UFC. But high-level promotions, man, we need that. And more options for guys to make money. That's what we need in this sport. My dad always had a great saying. It's like McDonald's is always going to be number one, but Jack in the Box is going to make a lot of money. Right? You're not going to, I like 99-cent tacos at 2 a.m., man. Like, we need that every once in a while, right?
I like them a little too much sometimes, but I feel you, Eric. Thank you so much for the time, man. Really looking forward to seeing you and your fighters coming up.
Love you, bro. Good to see you.